beautiful morning to you. Welcome to Perspective, your favorite breakfast show on ConsumerHallaTV, your favorite consumer TV channel. And on Perspective, this is where we take a deeper look at issues shaping a society and influencing everyday lives. I am Ire Ayomikole Eke. This morning on Perspective, we'll be having a conversation about Nigeria and Europe relations, affair, collaboration, and about this, Nigeria, with a population of about 230 million people, continues to play a critical role in shaping consumer market across Africa, especially as global trade and digital transactions expand. In a rapidly evolving marketplace, protecting consumer rights and ensuring fair practice, these have become increasingly important for sustainable economic growth. This has strengthened the collaboration between Nigeria and Europe, particularly in the area of consumer affairs, where both sides are working to improve the regulatory standard, enhance transparency, and build trust in cross-border trade. The partnership reflects a shared commitment to adapting to changing the market realities while safeguarding consumers and promoting responsible business practice. And about this conversation, joining us to explore this, we have Mr. Collins Nweke. Is an author of economic diplomacy of the Diaspora, to explore how both regions can deepen collaboration to enhance trade and improve consumer satisfaction. We have him live and direct in our studio this beautiful Wednesday morning. Over to you now, Mr. Collins. Good morning, sir.
Very good morning to you, Mr. Eke.
It's so nice to have you on the conversation.
My pleasure.
I wouldn't mind the handshake, sir.
Yes,
good morning,
indeed.
sir.
Indeed. That's my honor. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Collins, let's get into the conversation.
Right.
What key trade opportunities between Nigeria and Europe make a stronger market collaboration essential?
Yeah. Well, let me start with the context that you have already, provided, and just kind of deepen it a bit more. Nigeria and Europe are entering a new phase of engagement. I mean, you can call it a transitional phase, one that goes beyond trade volumes, because before now, the focus had always been on trade volume, whereas as we speak, the quality of of that trade is becoming as important as trade volume. That's one point to take note of. Now, in today's global market, consumers in Lagos now buy directly from Europe, from China, from everywhere. So that also means that, the level of protection needed, transparency and all of that, have got to be adapted to the character of today's market. Now, that is the reality of the day. And, smart governments all over the world are actually pushing to come along with the changing consumer expectation, consumer affairs. Now, we also have consumer protection groups, advocacy groups that are more and more realizing that their raison d'etre, that is the reason they exist, actually also is about enhancing that transparency, that protection, and in doing so, inevitably, trust is built, not only between the business person and the consumer, but also across borders in terms of the different trading partners involved.
I'm so glad that you made mention of enhancing transparency about this collaboration between Nigeria and Europe. But Nigeria has significant potential across both oil and non-oil sectors. How will they drive the industrial expansion for the international trade?
Well, that is already happening. I mean, well, you may say in small measures. And what we have noticed, over the past half a decade, some 5 years now, is, increased transactions. Now, the sort of transactions actually matter. Now, the focus had always been on, fossil fuel and all of that, but renewable energy, has now been identified as a more sustainable option. Now, there are some of us who say, yes, renewable energy is fine, but you also have to take the, developmental pace of, countries in the global south into consideration. Because you can't tell my grandmother in the, village to stop cooking with firewood, yet you haven't provided her, gas cooker. So you can't be talking about, protecting the environment and therefore don't cut down trees, or when you cut, you plant a new one. Those are all well and good, but at the same time, you have to face the reality of the day that when people don't have alternative, they will stay, where they are. Now, the mistake that people make up until now, and that is something, the narrative that we're trying to change, is that renewable energy is so very expensive and unaffordable. No, that's not the thing. I think it starts with the realization that it is a more sustainable alternative, and then, help people in that, transitioning. Now, I use that as an example, and you can extrapolate it to, other areas of trade and investment.
I'm glad you made mention of development pace, because when we're talking about this collaboration between the Nigeria and the Europe, obviously it's for development between the both countries coming together. But the European markets are known for strict regulatory requirements.
Yeah.
What are the fundamental standards Nigeria and African exports must meet, to have access to this market?
That's a very, very important question, and I'm going to illustrate my answer with an example. Last year, as we were coming for the Nigeria, Belgium, Luxembourg, business forum right here in Nigeria, because the kickoff is always in Nigeria, I got contacted by two young, dynamic Nigerians, Nigerian ladies for that matter. University graduates have tried to find jobs for themselves. They, didn't succeed, and so they decided to, get something started on their own. So they chose, consumer products, tried it a bit, selling from offices to offices and all of that. It was okay, but not quite what they wanted to do. And so they started thinking of export market, food products, to other parts of the world from Nigeria. So things that are made here in Nigeria, it could be things as simple as peanut, groundnuts, and all of that. Now, the bottleneck that they experienced was that of standard regulations, okay? Now, it turned out when we did a bit of research that there are institutions within the EU, for instance, EU-Nigeria Agric Partnership, that actually organize training on certification, but also standardization of products. Now, private sectors offer it as well, but the cost is just simply prohibitive, too expensive. For small businesses that are just starting off, it just doesn't, work. It's not feasible for them. So now I raise this example simply to say that when we then search further, because the question was, couldn't Europe be just too strict? I mean, is this protectionism? They are locking off their market, against developing countries and all of that. We said, no, it's about trust, building trust with the consumer. You can't bring in contaminated products, and you can't expect them to lower your products, their standards, because you want to start exporting. So what you do is find out what those standards are and say to yourself, how do I meet up the standard? They are not impossible. And so the conversation started to the point that today, they know exactly what they need to do to, improve their standards. but also the regulations and all of that. So, yeah, a lot of awareness needs to be created.
Mr. Collins, you made mention of a lot of points, but for in this minute, it's just about two things.
Yes.
I'll be laying emphasis on the standardization of products, and you also made mention of regularization to regulate things. And if you're talking about regularization, that means there are some necessary measures to be taken to achieve what is meant to achieve. Now, with a European consumer base of over 400 million people compliance, which is critical, how should the Nigerian government and the private sector shape the trade ties to benefit from these European market resources?
Yeah, very important question again. Off the cuff, I can think of three key factors.
Okay.
Number one is, again, strengthen regulatory coordination, which means, consumer protection agencies have got to, collaborate across a border. Extremely important. Now, secondly, there has to be investment in enforcement, okay? So it is not enough to, provide the regulatory environment, tell people these are the rules. You also have to, be sure that those rules are enforced, because when they are not enforced, you are back to square one. And then thirdly, it is important that stakeholders actually engage internationally. I mean, it is perfectly normal to understand your own, only your own operating environment, but the world has become such a global village that no country operates all by itself. You have to collaborate with others, and so that means that TV stations like yours, consumer protection bodies, have got to reach beyond their immediate borders to know how it is done elsewhere. But more importantly, Mr. Eke, I think it's the key thing here is that if you are not on the table, you are on the menu. So, Nigerian government and other stakeholders have got to be part of the conversations around these rules. Because if you are not there when the conversation is taking place, well, there is every likelihood that the rules will be made in a manner that doesn't favor you, because your voice was not taken into consideration. And that is why international collaboration is important. And to that extent, I'm happy we're having this conversation, because it's all about Nigeria-Europe consumer affairs relations. That way we create, awareness.
If we're talking about this kind of conversation, Mr. Collins, that it's directly a bilateral relation. And if you are making sure that everything is okay at the European side, now we have to take strict measures home. I'm talking about home. We all know Nigeria is our home. And a major issue in Nigeria is the limited capacity for local processing, and this is always leading to the continued export of raw materials and loss of value. So talking about this trend, we know that it happens. We see it in the news past in the days, and a lot of people have been talking about it. So can this be reversed?
Yes, it can be reversed. And when it's reversed, Mr. Eke, Europe is not doing Nigeria any favor. It is a smart thing for Europe for the transactions between the continent, the two continents, to to be sustained. Now, what we have here is this. It's a situation where the left hand washes the right, and then you get a clean hand. Now, Europe has the capacity. They also have the, the financing. When I talk of capacity, I'm talking of the technical know-how and all of that. Now, out here in Africa, Nigeria, as a case study, they have the market, a large one for that matter, because of the population, but also a dynamic young population. If you look at the population pyramid of Africa, of Nigeria, for instance, it is very, very heavy on the bottom. So which means that the younger generation, the younger people, active workforce, they are present, talented, educated, amenable to further training and all of that. So what we do at the Nigeria-Belgium-Luxembourg Business Forum is to link all of this together. Yes, you got the capacity, which means the technical know-how. The market is elsewhere because you are not producing for your people to be consuming. You are producing to be exported elsewhere. But your economy has also reached what they call the saturation point, where you no longer have the space for those productions. So why don't you go to where the raw material is, do the production there, and then export back to your country? By doing that, you create employment in the source country where the raw material is, and then you export. Now, your profit margin may not be as astronomical as it would be if you just cut away the raw materials and send over there. Now, some will say, oh, this is theoretical. No, it is not theoretical, because there are quite a good and growing number of European investors that are yielding to that gospel according to fair production. Europe, Africa. And this is the time to preach that gospel more, not less.
All right, I hope we preach that gospel. I needed it to land there, Mr. Collins, because this conversation is getting more interesting.
Yeah.
Earlier on, you made mention of the European are not doing Nigeria a favor, but to the masses, those who do not have a proper understanding, they think an institution like this, Nigeria, has something to gain from European. Can you clear the air better for those people who do not have the proper ideology of this conversation?
Yeah. To put it in in a layman's language, right? When you produce, you are producing for the product to be sold. Somebody has got to buy them. You are not producing for you to consume it. Just like let's use subsistence farming, for instance. So there are farmers in the village that farm only for themselves and their family. There are others who farm for themselves and their family, but also to sell those part of those products for people to generate money that they need to finance other things. See production from that perspective. The Europeans have the technical know-how to produce, but they also need a market. Now, what has happened most of the time is that Africa, Nigeria to be more specific, have not quite been clear about what they want in terms of saying that productions can now move base because we have the capacity, we have the raw material, as opposed to going over there. And when they do that, imagine a situation where they say, okay, well, if you are not going to produce here, we are not selling our raw materials. They are going to be stuck, and nobody wants that. You see? So the number may not be large, but there are certainly, I know this because Europe has been moved for some 30 years now, and in the last 10, 15 years, I've been shuttling between both continents, facilitating business deals and all of that. So I know what I'm talking about when I say that. Then it is gradually growing, that awareness that there are opportunities here for production that creates jobs, and then it doesn't affect the market. And I can only see it, going bigger and bigger.
We still have some areas to touch about regarding this conversation. And if you're just joining us, that is Mr. Collins Nweke. We're having a conversation about Nigeria-Europe consumer affairs collaboration in a changing market and perspective this beautiful morning. Let's go on a short break. We'll be right back. It's still perspective. We'll be right back.
Hi people, my name is Mo Fakorede and I am a filmmaker and a film director. and you're watching ConsumerHalla TV. ConsumerHalla TV is everything consumer advocacy, consumer rights, everything that has to do with consumers. On this TV, you'd watch, you'd learn, you'd be educated, and you'd be entertained. Keep watching ConsumerHalla TV.
My name is Olubukola Ozone, a photographer and a social media enthusiast. You're watching ConsumerHalla TV. It's a consumer advocacy TV. If you have a problem, anything, any consumer related problem, just holla at them, just like their name implies, and they're going to get it sorted for you. Keep watching, stay tuned. Thank you very much.
Hi guys, my name is Joba Jalabi. I'm a marketing communications professional. I currently lead marketing at Flash Change, a fintech startup. Keep watching ConsumerHalla TV, a consumer advocacy channel.
Hello, my name is Sharon Rotimi. I'm an actor and I am on ConsumerHalla TV. Now, ConsumerHalla TV is a consumer advocacy channel. So if you have any issues, consumer-related issues with brands and services, you can reach out to them and they'll be sure to handle it or to cater to you. Thank you so much.
Hi guys, my name is Iyebiye Adeton. I'm a film poster designer and illustrator. This is ConsumerHalla TV. It's a consumer advocacy channel. We show content on consumers-based news, entertainment, and all of that. So I urge you guys to stay tuned to ConsumerHalla TV.
My name is Anoluwapo Alao, a sales consultant for Star Times Nigeria. This is a ConsumerHalla TV, where they discuss anything consumer needs, and you get knowledge about anything about consumer. So keep watching.
Hi, my name is Adebola Ogushino. I'm a filmmaker and you're watching ConsumerHalla TV. Any consumer related issues, because
Thank you for still staying with us. If you're just joining us, you're not too late. Absolutely. This is Perspective at ConsumerHalla TV, where we have discussions about all burning and pressing issues making the rounds. And this morning, we're having a conversation about the Nigeria-Europe Consumer Affairs collaboration in a changing market. And we have an expert in the studio this beautiful morning. We have Mr. Collins Nweke. Mr. Collins, now let's get back to the conversation. The EU-Nigerian partnership lays a lot of emphasis on job creation, because when we're talking about stuff like issues like this, definitely job creation is important, because it will give people the ability to showcase what they've got. And when we're talking about this as well, how can institutions like the European Investment Bank partner with the local financial institutions to unlock funding for the industrial growth in terms of job creation?
Right. It starts with a concept. You got to know what you want, what you are targeting. But before you do that, you also need to, dig for information, because the European Investment Bank that you mentioned as an example have their priorities. Okay, you need to understand what those priorities are, where they want to put their money. And then you need to then, align that with your project, and then, get on with, your project proposal. Part of it also is, collaboration. Reach out for partnership, because it is always, an essential part of, the process of securing their funding. They don't want nobody, even right within Europe, to operate as an island. They want people to interact. They want people to do things together. So partnership is important, and that is part of what Nigeria, Belgium, Luxembourg, Business Forum brings to the table in terms of identifying relevant partners for relevant projects aimed at creating employment locally, but also a market for European products. So you see, this is not philanthropy, and that's I want to continue to emphasize this.
Okay.
People here in Africa, in Nigeria, they have this mistaken notion that when Europe does something here in Africa, that they are doing that out of benevolence. No, there is always something in need for them to gain. Or at least right now, that mentality is changing. It is now a relationship of give and take. Okay? So when, for instance, and I will keep it concrete, when, for instance, European investment, or Europe as a continent, European Union as a political bloc, when they decide that they are going to support job-creating initiatives in Africa, now the reason they do that, mainly, primarily, is to actually go to the source of illegal migration. Because when young people don't have perspectives in Europe, in their countries, in their continent, in Nigeria, for instance, the tendency to want to japa is higher. And a good number of them, take high risks to be able to do that. A few succeed, and those who succeed, they come into their country, Europe in this case, and constitute sometimes, some nuisance. They become a burden on their social security system and so on and so forth. So one way or the other, the burden goes back to them. Now, to stop that from happening, they would rather put money in the source countries where these economic migrants are produced, so that they find they create job opportunities for them right in their countries, and so the tendency to want to leave is reduced. I'm not saying wipe it away. And by the way, I don't want to sit here and tell you that I have anything against migration. Okay. Migration is a very fantastic thing, and young people should be explored to migrate. But everybody cannot migrate. Opportunities here should as well be explored.
All right, your analysis are well laid, Mr. Collins, I must say. And regarding to what you said, let's turn our attention, or let's get focused on the Japa syndrome about that. We all know Nigeria's digital economy continues to expand, but the infrastructure gaps, particularly in power and connectivity, remain a challenge. So what practical support can Europe give Nigeria over this for stability? Yeah.
Again, I come back to availability of technical know-how in Europe. That is something they have, because they have been doing it for a long time. So the technical know-how is there. Support in the area of research and development, R&D, is equally there. The equipment, engineering and all of that, they are there. That is not to say that all of those things are absent in Nigeria, but the scale is more in Europe. Now, because the opportunity is there for certain things to be produced right here in Africa, because talking of e-commerce, the world has become borderless, in terms of production and all of that. So there is absolutely nothing wrong, and they see it as part of, things that make business sense for certain things to be produced here, and that is why they are ready to put money in here for certain things to be produced here, even train, some technical personnel that can, not without living in Nigeria, actually be servicing, part of European economy. And I'll give you one example and leave it at that. At this moment, there is a young man in Enugu who is a graphic designer. He designs websites, flyers, and all of that, right? At the moment, part of his clientele include European people. Now, this young man, from his mother's back room, with his phone and apps, installed in it, he can create any design. He doesn't need to buy all the huge, expensive machines. So service export is something that has, is becoming more and more popular. And so Europe realizes that. And so they are now supporting initiatives that train people in their country to also service their own market, their own economy. And it is happening in an increasing number. the awareness only has to be created.
All right, great. Let's talk about substantial funding to Nigeria. The EU has confirmed substantial funding to Nigeria, including 731 million under the 2021-2027 partnership, an additional 290 million for digitalization, healthcare, and agriculture. So how can these funds effectively be utilized to strengthen the local industry and improve the consumer outcomes?
Yeah. First, I will start with why Europe is doing that. Because again, perception is important. The reason Europe is doing that is that their engineering output, in terms of digital infrastructure and all of that, have got to be offset somewhere. People have got to buy them. All right? So, creating the opportunity for collaboration also means that they are creating a market for their own products elsewhere. That's one. Now, for Africa, for Nigeria, it is now for them to, seize on the moment, grab the opportunity, and use it, tie it with, government policies that target young people especially, and then universities as well, where some of these trainings take place, so that at the end of the day, demand is actually meeting supply at the right place.
Okay. Now let's wait back home. We all know that insecurity has become a canker that eating deep into the system. Is one of the things that everyone is talking about, and we all know that it remains a major obstacle to industrial and agricultural development. So, with many communities displaced by conflict, how can Nigeria leverage its partnership with Europe to address these challenges through a discipline and a strategic support?
Yeah. Just before I flew down to Nigeria, I think a day or two prior, I spoke at an event. It's an advocacy group working on the resuscitation and sustainability of the Ajaokuta steel industry. Now, you wonder what this has got to do with the question you asked. Let me tell you something. Steel is so very important. Ajaokuta has been on for over 40 years, has gone comatose, is not producing. Now, the weapons that are needed by Europe, the producers of those weapons, to be able to fight, insurgencies, terrorism, and all of that, Nigeria is missing out the opportunities there. Take, for instance, if Ajaokuta steel industry was working and, creating jobs and all of that, they should be able to, supply, some products, steel products that are used in, I'm not saying that's the only example, but it's just one example to illustrate that there are quite a lot of, opportunities that we are not taking advantage from. But I don't want to dwell on the negatives. Now, I would rather point people to where those opportunities are missing and, suggest ways, to close those gaps. So yes, those opportunities are there, and Europe, took them on because it is helping Africa to grow as well, but also doing business with the Africans, for Africa to take the advantage.
That's great, Mr. Collins. Because of the time, let's have your parting shots. Let's have your concluding remark about this.
Yes. My concluding remark is that the world, especially as far as trade is concerned, has become borderless. Now, we are in an era where emphasis, is no longer so much on trade volumes, but rather on trade quality. Because when that happens, when there is trade quality as opposed to trade volume, you build confidence, you build trust, and these are the two key pillars for consumers across borders. So that people know, in Europe, for instance, that when a product is coming from Africa, that those products are not contaminated, that they are of the same standards as, the products made within their own borders. And, the other way around. So this is why it is important that, everyone realizes that the focus has now got to shift from aid to trade, whereby money is brought down, from Europe, just do one or two things here in Africa. No, teach the people how to fish rather than giving them a fish. That is the new mantra, and I believe that within the Nigeria-Belgium Luxembourg Business Forum, we are promoting that actively, and that's why I'm happy that ConsumerHallaTV hosted me for this conversation.
All right, it's a pleasure to have you, Mr. Collins Nweke. Thank you so much for your time, and it's so good to see you in person. I hope to see more of you, and I must thank you for taking me closer to my hometown. You made mention of Enugu, so it's quite closer to Imo State. So I must thank you for taking me home today.
From Imo State, wow.
The conversation, yes, I'm from Imo State. Thank you so much, Mr. Collins, for joining us on the conversation this morning. And that is it. As trade continues to evolve, partnership like this will remain key to unlock growth, improve standard, and delivering better outcomes for consumers. And that is where we end Perspective this morning on ConsumerHallaTV. And we're joined by Mr. Collins Nweke on this conversation, giving us beautiful insight. He is an author and economic diplomacy of the Diaspora, giving us full insight about the Nigeria-Europe consumer affairs collaboration in a changing market. Thank you once again. Please follow us on all our social media platforms and do well to subscribe to YouTube channel. Stay with us for the rest of the day. Good morning, Nigeria.